Aquarius, welcome to your full moon reading for the upcoming Aries harvest moon that starts October. So quite a busy month October is going to be, I have to say. The astrology certainly is very interesting and very active. So brace yourselves. This is going to be quite, I think, a drama-filled and eventful and volatile couple of months. But let's talk about the full moon in relation to you specifically. So I've got the Arcana of Astrology cards here, and they're just going to help me to illustrate a few concepts that I think are important to understand about this full moon, when it comes to you in particular. So the first thing to say, of course, is that the sun and the moon will be on opposite sides of the earth, and for you they will fall in the two signs of the third and the ninth houses. So the sun, the moon in Aries will be in your third house of communication, in the intellect, travel, and this is on a local level, as well as learning and self-expression. And the sun in Libra will be in your ninth house of wisdom, higher education, teaching, in terms of like philosophy and that kind of thing, spiritual downloads and information, inspiration, as well as foreign travel and publishing, and then religious or spiritual or cultural things, things to do with where we are perhaps differ from others socially, on a kind of social dimension. So yes, quite an interesting set of houses to be having this full moon in. But the other thing to say, of course, is that the this third house area for you is also going to be full of quite a few planets and chart points. So we've got Chiron that will be making a conjunction to the moon at this full moon. So I think this is going to add another layer to the significance and the energy of this full moon. It's going to bring in a healing dimension to whatever happens around about that time or the 2 weeks that follow. And this is likely to be healing in terms of like communication. Maybe you're going to hear from somebody that you've been estranged from, for example. It could be a relative, like a sibling, because this is the third house of close relatives, so it's usually cousins or siblings. It could also be some kind of, maybe you're going to get an apology from somebody that you've been hoping to receive for a long time. So, I just feel like healing messages are likely to come through as a result of this particular planetary combination. And then Mars will also be in this sector of your chart. Now, this will be a little bit less harmonious. Mars is going to be making a conjunction to Black Moon Lilith. So this is, for me, the chart point rather than the asteroid, but I'm just using that as, kind of the symbol for Black Moon Lilith. So Mars will be making a conjunction to Black Moon Lilith, the dark moon, and this is coming off the back of that very difficult and challenging square to Saturn that happened on the 29th of September. So quite frustrating, aggravating energy, a lot to do with people being deliberately obstructive, or situations kind of playing out where maybe people have ghosted you, stonewalled you, grey rocked you, just kind of made you feel very frustrated, where you wanted to kind of sort things out possibly. Other people just didn't want to kind of play ball. That's one way this energy may have played out for you. The other, of course, is that it might have been that you were blocked somehow when it came to communication about something that was of significance to you psychologically, because Saturn is sitting in your 12th house of the psyche, so along with Jupiter and Pluto. So these three planets are currently sitting here in your 12th house of the psyche, and this is the subconscious. It is institutions. It is where we kind of feel most cut off from the world. So things like nunneries, monasteries, hospitals, psychiatric institutions, libraries, places where communication is not really encouraged. You've got to be quiet, you've got to kind of toe the line. It's places of like hushed voices and all of that kind of thing, and seclusion, retreat. So it could be that you took yourself away from a situation and decided not to communicate for whatever reason, and maybe things were a little bit fraught between you and somebody else. And so you kind of held your tongue, or you held back on some level. but it was frustrating. Maybe you really wanted to say something, and you would have felt that at the end of August, and then again at the end of September, because that's when we've had the 2 passes of this particular square. So that energy will be kind of playing into this particular full moon, because Saturn will be fresh from that encounter, and it will be keying into the energy. It will be kind of squaring, it will be directly affecting the energies of the moon at this time. So that's just something to bear in mind. And then, of course, Jupiter and Saturn are both direct now in Capricorn. So there's definitely going to be a noticeable shift, I think, when it comes to how you feel internally. Pluto is still retrograde, so you might still be doing a little bit of incubation or kind of underworld exploration. But I do think that you're kind of coming up for air slowly. You're coming to the surface with these 2 planets now direct. So that will also, I think, feature for you at this full moon and in the 2 weeks that follow. So let's get into your geomantic reading and see what messages want to come through. Yes, I think October on the whole is going to be quite an interesting and eventful month. So if you haven't seen my in-depth forecast on the astrology of this period, you might want to subscribe or go to the membership areas. The video is already up. In many respects, one of the key themes is about self-empowerment, and this might be going it on your own career-wise, or it could simply mean being more more self-reliant emotionally, not depending on other people so much, kind of coming into your power with personal relationships. But equally, it could be about just standing your ground and asserting your needs if you feel on principle that something is unfair or unjust or out of balance. Okay, so let's deal the cards. I just want to straighten that out. Again, I'm doing something slightly different with the reading. I won't be turning over every single card, because I just think you end up with too much information. So we're going to be really focused and precise this time when it comes to planetary energies and how this dovetails with the elemental realm. All right, so let's start with the full moon itself, which, as I say, is going to be in your 3rd and your 9th houses. So that's here and here. Nice. Interesting. So the full moon here in your 3rd house is represented by Kase. This geomantic figure is earth energy, so the earth element, and from a planetary perspective it's ruled by Saturn in Capricorn. So all that stuff I was saying about the Saturn-Mars square and feeling like you couldn't say what you wanted to say, or the communication was cut off, I think is being emphasized by this geomantic figure. So there's definitely been a sense of feeling a little bit isolated from others. Maybe you haven't been talking to other people as much, and that I think is true for many people since social distancing rules and kind of lockdown started, people working from home. People slowly become a little bit sort of hermit-like, and I think that communication has ceased to a large extent. We started off with all those Zoom parties and things at the beginning of this whole pandemic, and slowly as time has gone on, I think people have become less and less socially oriented and more internal. And I think that's been part of the dark night of the soul that we are going through collectively, that was precipitated by that Saturn-Pluto conjunction. So interesting that you've got this echoed in your 3rd house. But we will clarify with the trinkets in a minute. But needless to say, I think coming into this full moon, you will be coming to the peak or the culmination of that feeling of being cut off communication-wise, or also potentially being in the dark in terms of information. It may be that you are waiting for something to click into place in your head about something you've been learning or trying to understand. And I feel as though that information will start to come through as we move through the waning moon cycle. Because here in your ninth house, in the position of the sun, is Fortuna Major. Interesting that it's ruled by the sun. So very solar energy. This is fire ruled, a fire ruled figure. So Fortuna Major here is it's very much about being favored, success, charisma, a kind of an uptick in your outlook on life. This is the house of beliefs, but it's also to a large extent about it can be about the law. So there may be an overlap here between the sun and Libra, which is about justice and legal matters, about making judgments, and of course the ninth house is also associated with law as well, as in terms of ethics, morals, that kind of thing, law and order. So it's possible that you've been waiting for a decision about a legal matter, and it does look as though it will go in your favor with Fortuna Major here. This is very auspicious energy. This is one of the most auspicious of the geomantic figures. Think of the sun in the tarot or the sun in the Lenormand. This is very, very positive, optimistic, successful energy as well. So could also be something to do with a trip. Maybe you're thinking about booking a trip to go somewhere sunny, to be quite literal. This is looking good for that. It suggests that it will do you good, maybe good for your soul. So maybe less sort of 12th house kind of energy and more, a nice break somewhere, change of scene, that kind of thing. But equally, it could relate to an educational publishing project that goes extremely well. That looks good here too. So, think about the full moon here as being potentially about a culmination, things finally coming to a positive climax and an ending to restrictions, feeling limited, feeling isolated, or feeling somehow uninhibited, unable to sort of express your point of view or say what you want to say. So let's look to the position of Saturn, which is here in your 12th house. Interesting. So we do have Rubeus here, which is a water-ruled geomantic figure. So Rubeus is about passion, but it's also about obsession. It's where we kind of ruminate. And as I say, I do think that there's been this quite difficult energy that you've had in your 12th house with Saturn and Pluto retrograde here. So I think with Jupiter going forward in particular, that should really start to get you out of this quite dark energy. It's Scorpio, so it's plumbing those depths. It's definitely a trip through the underworld, which is necessary. We do need to kind of go there and work with what's there, because it becomes fertilizer for our roots. It helps us to grow, but equally we don't get stuck there. And I think it's very important, for there to be movement and momentum. Something that I think is emphasized by the fact that this harvest moon comes off the back of the equinox, which is all about a shift in seasons. So I feel as though there's a shift happening for everybody in terms of cycles or phases where we're kind of at. So that's interesting. And then I'm trying to think what else we need to look at. So 3rd and 9th, so you could be communicating on a number of levels. So let's look at 4th house in case it has to do with, yes. It looks to me as though, if you are feeling blocked communication-wise, to do with a relative, it could well, it could be a family member that we're talking about here, because we've got another Saturn-ruled geomantic figure in your 4th house of home, family, and roots. So this is Saturn in Aquarius. This is air energy. Air, this is Aquarius is I know it's a bit confusing because it looks like water, but Aquarius is actually an air sign, and it's the man who's holding the jar of water. So that's what this is about. But Tristia is to do with sorrow, loss, grief, disappointment, just a feeling of loss. So I do feel as though maybe there's been some kind of disconnect between you and potentially a relative. and or maybe you've had a relative pass on, a family member, and it's been difficult for you to express your grief, and that may be why you're kind of in this very quite dark place here in your psyche. But if that is the case, just know that the sun is coming out. This is, I mean, the ninth house can also be about messages from your spirit guides, divine assistance, from angels, from the higher realms. So pay attention to your dreams, pay attention to anything that gets repeated, in threes. That could be a sign or an omen for you, a message from a departed relative, for example, as well as things like bibliomancy, just asking a question by opening a book to a certain page and reading the first thing that comes into your line of vision. That can also be a way to kind of get messages or guidance. So I do feel strongly that guidance is going to come through for you at this full moon and the 2 weeks that follow. But let's look at the 6th house, because that's opposite the 12th. Yes. So this is what I feel very strongly, is that if you've been in a dark place recently, that is coming to an end. A new cycle is starting for you, certainly when it comes to work and health. And of course, the 12th and the 6th houses are very strongly connected. So this is Cancer Capricorn energy here. So, if things have been a little bit, if things have flatlined during Saturn retrograde or because of that square, then I do feel like you're getting a reset button here, probably at the new moon in Virgo. That energy is going to come in for you. But so just see this 2-week cycle as a chance to work through this energy and to kind of loosen it up a little bit, so that you get momentum at the new moon in Virgo that's happening mid-October, because that's a really, really auspicious time, astrologically speaking, thanks to a sextile between Jupiter and Neptune. So that's just something to bear in mind going forward. But let's pull some trinkets and see what messages how we can clarify what's going on here. So first one for that moon in Aries. Yes, so the hearts here definitely say to me that whatever you're feeling blocked or inhibited or restricted about has to do with a heart connection. So I do feel like this is potentially a family member that you are estranged from or separated from on some level. So let's have one for the 4th house. Interesting. So with the fox here, I do feel as though maybe you've had to be a little bit wily or cunning. Maybe there's been a kind of like what do you call it? Triangulation maybe has been going on within your family between 3 parties. So it could be that maybe the reason that you are estranged from a sibling or a close relative is because of the interference of, say, a maternal figure, because this is 4th house, or a parent or some other family member who's maybe interfered, because the fox very often is a little bit slippery. It can sometimes be a bit deceptive. It's not usually a kind of betraying kind of energy, but it's very self-interested. So maybe you've had to tiptoe around somebody, be very diplomatic, for example, around somebody who could also be depressed. Maybe this is a relative that's been a little bit depressed, and maybe this has caused a kind of a rift in the family. So let's have one for Rubeus. Interesting. So I think it's kind of reiterating the fact that if you have been a little bit broody lately, if you have had quite a lot of dark thoughts, the Tower here is suggesting feeling isolated on some level. And I think, this could be by cut off communication. Yes. Let's see what's going on in your 11th house. Interesting. So friends, it's not because of social isolation. I feel this is more to do with a family matter, or just because you can't travel within your local environment. It could also be your car. Maybe your car is kind of broken down, or some mode of transport, or you don't want to take, maybe you don't want to take public transport, and that's also made you a little bit isolated. But your 11th house is looking really positive, and of course, Aquarius, you are very 11th house oriented, aren't you? with being Uranus ruled. So that looks very positive. I think friends and group situations on social media offering you an outlet and a kind of boost when it comes to positive and expansive emotions. So that's good. Right, 1 for Fortuna Major, please. Wow, so this is the lily, and for me the lily is all about wisdom. So fitting, because the 3rd and 11th, the 9th house are to do with knowledge and logic on one hand, and then inspiration and wisdom on the other. So I do feel as though you've grown enormously. Whatever sort of suffering you've been through, I think it's given you a real growth spurt, certainly spiritually. And you're seeing life from a very, very different perspective. And this may be why we've got Fortuna Major here. Maybe you've really kind of graduated when it comes to your spiritual development, and your kind of up-leveling, and this is making you see life from a very different perspective. Very often when we come from the kind of soul perspective on situations that are maybe hurtful from the human perspective, we realize maybe that happened because I needed to learn X lesson, and then we don't take things as personally. We realize this is just one phase of one lifetime, that and there are so many that it really shouldn't be taken so seriously, and then we lighten up a little bit, but we don't feel so heavy. Let's just have one for Capricornus for work. Nice. So this fresh start could very well be quite lucrative for you, Aquarius. So if you are thinking about, kind of starting a new job, or a new health routine, or it could be about getting pet fish, but I don't really think so. I think it's more to do with some kind of shift in your work or health that leads to a feeling of abundance, because fishes here are usually about abundance, particularly finances. So that's looking really, really positive. Maybe you're kind of in for a promotion or a raise. Ooh, nice. Puella here in your 2nd house of earned income. So this is one of the benefics. Puella is an air sign, and it's all about positive shifts, usually to do with relationships, but it can also be about improved relationships, say with a boss. Let's see what's going on your 10th. Oh, yes. So things are looking up career-wise. This is definitely looking very, very positive. Improved relationships with a boss, maybe some kind of promotion, a raise, but definitely some kind of improvement in circumstances. Puella is very, very auspicious energy. It's ruled by Venus, and Venus, of course, is going to be very active this month. Lots of positive aspects being made to the other planets. So that's also something to look out for when it comes to the astrology of October, which is, of course, ruled by Venus. It's Libra season. Fantastic. So looking up, let's have a final parting message for you. What parting message do we have for Aquarius at this Aries full moon? That one wants to come out, I think. So does that. Let's see. Okay, so the universe works fast when I'm having fun. That's exactly what I was saying. So I feel that this pertains very much to that sun in the 9th house. So definitely a need to kind of lighten up, let go of any heavy energy, and allow the energy to flow. I always trust the direction of the universe, and I know that I'm being guided. So again, pointing to this Fortuna Major in your 9th house of spirit guides and divine guidance. So lovely reading, Aquarius. I hope you've enjoyed it. Do let me know if you have. I'd always appreciate a like if you've got value out of this. And yes, wishing you all the best for the next 2 weeks.